Hey guys, it's GirlGotGame, and these are my final thoughts on Life is Strange True Colors and the DLC Wavelengths. If you've watched any of my other final thoughts videos, this will be a little different from those, as I've not played through different romances or different endings. As such, this will probably be on the shorter side, as I won't be ranking anything, but instead just giving a general review of how I enjoyed the game, as well as the story I experienced in my one playthrough. And as always, keep in mind that I will be talking about spoilers, so if you haven't played True Colors for yourself, or watched myself or someone else play through it, then I encourage you to do that before watching this review. With that said, let's begin. So, Life is Strange True Colors is the third main title in this series, and the fifth game when you include Before the Storm and The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. I've enjoyed all the games, and this latest installment and its DLC are no exception. I felt like this was a good return to form for the series. While I did enjoy Life is Strange 2, one thing I really missed when playing through that was the small town aspect of the first game, where you really get to explore and learn about the town and the people that live there. Coming back to a small town setting in True Colors was great. Haven Springs is an absolutely gorgeous town to look at. It's filled with a great variety of characters that I loved interacting with and learning more about, and while I was daunted at first by just how big the area is for you to now explore, I really liked it. Something new that was implemented in this game too was a side quest mechanic. They're 100% optional, but the completionist explorer in me definitely felt rewarded for interacting with everyone and everything and finishing those little side quests. Plus, it definitely helped the town feel more alive as you got to learn more about other people in the town that weren't part of the main cast. Another thing that felt like a return to form and was very welcome was being able to control the character with the powers. Don't get me wrong, I loved Daniel in Life is Strange 2, but I have to say I was kind of stressed not having direct control over him because I was worried I was constantly going to be missing prompts to use his powers if I wasn't nearby or not looking at something while near him. It was nice to just take things at my own pace again here and use the powers without that restriction. And as for the powers themselves, I think they were implemented really well here. When I learned our girl was going to have empathic powers, I was really curious how that was going to be implemented gameplay-wise and how it would be portrayed in a way that made sense to the player. I thought the way it was implemented into the gameplay was very well done. I loved the sections where you dived deeper into a character's feelings and the scenery changed around them to reflect what they were feeling inside. Being able to interact with specific items and then choosing an appropriate response to help the character through that feeling was really neat, and I liked that puzzle aspect of the game. And I also loved that the collectibles in this game were objects of significance that had strong memories and emotions attached to them. I felt like these collectibles were the best out of all the games in the series, since they felt like they had importance to them, and I appreciated getting backstory on the characters in the game from it too. If I had anything negative to say about this part of the game, it would be that using empathic powers on people while exploring and hearing their thoughts was a little disappointing to me, simply because I feel like this excludes us from having a telepathic character in future. But at the same time, I don't know how you'd be able to convey those feelings properly without some kind of verbal explanation, so this honestly may have been the best way to handle things in a way that us as players could understand. So it's just a minor nitpick on my part. And then, of course, I'd be absolutely remiss if I didn't mention the music. I know I've said this a fair bit while playing these games, but I'm going to say it again here. The music is phenomenal. Even though I always have to say RIP to my monetization when I play these games, it's always worth the sacrifice. I feel like so much of the experience would be lost without hearing the different music tracks throughout the game. They're always so well picked and suit the mood perfectly. And that goes for the instrumental music as well. That was also very well done here. As a side note, I do hope maybe in the next game in the series that they implement a streamer mode that isn't just silence. If they could go the extra mile and compose some music for those scenes that usually have copyrighted music playing, that would be just amazing. I can only imagine how extremely silly some of these scenes must have looked on streamer mode with no music playing in the background. So if that could be implemented in future, that would be an awesome addition, so I'm going to try to speak it into existence by mentioning that here. And of course, I have to talk about our protagonist, Alex Chen. She's so lovable. When we first meet her, she's super guarded and nervous, anxious to make a good impression on her brother that she's been separated from for years, as well as the other residents in the town she's moved to. She's hoping for a fresh start, and things do go relatively well at first, but in classic Life is Strange fashion, it doesn't stay that way for long, and our girl loses her brother on the day she reunites with him, and gets embroiled in a crazy mystery to try and solve why he died. Also in classic Life is Strange fashion, our protagonist is a bit of a meddler and rather nosy, so she gets embroiled in the lives and secrets of everyone in town rather quickly, but, at least in my playthrough, she ended up having a rather good impact on everyone in town and helped a lot of people, which in turn gave her a lot more confidence in herself and her powers. I am a little torn on whether her rapid progression in confidence is realistic, given that the game plays out over the course of a month, I think. But then I remember that Max grew a ton in the first Life is Strange game over the course of less than a week, so in comparison, Alex does feel more natural than that. One thing that really separates Alex from the other Life is Strange protagonists is that we don't see her get her powers out of the blue in the first part of the game. She's already had them for many years by that point, even though she doesn't really start to explore them more until the events of this game. Still, it's nice to play someone whose powers have been with her long enough that she's not really questioning how she got them anymore at that point. She's just trying to figure out how to exercise them in a way that's of benefit to herself and others. Alex is also way less secretive about her abilities than Max or Daniel were, and I honestly think that probably saved her a lot of grief. Having a solid support system in Steph and Ryan was a huge help to her, and helped things progress smoother than they would have if she kept it to herself. And speaking of Steph and Ryan, may I just say, our girl Alex's flirting game was on point. Her flirting with either of those two often left me howling with laughter at how speechless she could render both of them, and I wish I could be half as smooth as she is. All in all, Alex was a fantastic protagonist to play, and I really felt for her, especially when she went through that flashback in the final chapter of the game. Seeing how her family slowly fell apart, and the guilt she had carried with her for so long was heartbreaking, and I was so glad when she was able to come to terms with her past and move past the lingering guilt that she had held on to, and finally find a new place to call home after so long. And then finally, I want to talk about the overarching story of the game. I'd say the stakes in this game felt smaller in comparison to the stakes in the other games in this series, but it was still a well-done story. I liked that we had a small-town mystery that we were Scooby Gang solving with close friends. That was one of the things I really liked in the original game, so it was nice to go through something like that again. There was also a personal motivation for Alex to investigate this, since her brother was killed in this supposed accident. I do kind of wish we had had a bit more time with Gabe before losing him. That, or maybe even some kind of flashback to when they were kids earlier than what we saw in Chapter 5, since I think I would have felt more motivation myself to investigate his death as well. Of course, it's possible I say that because I really liked Gabe and I wanted more time with him, but I'll never tell. I also liked that there were some small foreshadowing hints as to who the quote-unquote bad guy was in this. The biggest hint is given during the LARP in Chapter 3 when Jed starts out as the King of the Kingdom, which really symbolized how the entire town viewed him, only for it to be revealed that he was the big bad you'd fight at the end. I thought that was pretty clever, if a little on the nose. I don't think this particular reveal was as shocking as Mark Jefferson's in the first game. The hints for him were definitely more subtle. Unlike Mark Jefferson, though, Jed is very much a more sympathetic character. His story really was one of how one lie can escalate out of control and lead to so much suffering and death, and I did actually feel sorry for him. He made a horrible mistake. Yes, he ran away from taking responsibility for it and lied about it to not only friends, but even his own family for so many years, and only admitted to it because he was confronted after failing to kill Alex, and her using her super-duper empath abilities to stare deeply into his heart and drag it out of him. But, still, I did feel some sympathy for him, unlike Mark Jefferson, who has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. A big change that I noticed with this game, too, is how short it feels to the other games. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. I actually thought the pace was well done for the most part, and I never felt like there was any part of the game that was dragging on too long. In fact, I think the only part of the game that I felt was strange pacing-wise was Chapter 5. It seemed to wrap incredibly fast, especially after going through the whole dream memory sequence with Alex. For her to go from there, deep in the mine, to immediately for the final showdown in front of the entire town just felt a little sudden and off to me, but that's the only real section I can think of where it could have been a little better. But all in all, I really enjoyed the story. My favorite chapter would have to be Chapter 3 with the LARP, absolutely. It was such a fun addition to the game, and I loved that it played like a turn-based RPG. Absolutely no contest there. And of course, if you watch my playthrough, you'll know I romanced Ryan, and I was very happy with how that all played out. Ryan was an absolute goober, and there was a very particular moment during the kiss scene between him and Alex that mirrored something very similar between my husband and I with our first kiss. So that got me unexpectedly all in my feels, and only made me fall for Ryan even more. And while I am curious about what Alex would do if she left Haven Springs, I really liked that her and Ryan decided to stay there. Considering everything that happened and how shook up the town was, I liked that Ryan and Alex stayed and helped the community rebuild and stabilize after everything went down. And for Alex's sake, after being shipped around willy-nilly after her father walked out on her and Gabe, I liked that she found a place to settle after so long and be part of a community that genuinely cared about her. I was genuinely happy with how the story ended for her. So that was my thoughts on the base game, and now for my thoughts on the DLC Wavelengths. It was a fun short story with best girl Steph. Since Steph doesn't have powers, at least that we know of, gameplay with her consisted of all the crazy multitasking she does at her DJ job at the record store. I got a lot of respect for Steph after going through that DLC, honestly. Girl killed it. And it was neat how there were small moments with people in the town calling in, texting, or leaving gifts for Steph in between seasons. With that said, even though timeline-wise this takes place before the main game, I would recommend playing it after, as those sorts of things mean more after getting to know the characters in the main game. Also, the other really neat thing is there are tons of Easter eggs in the DLC too. If you've played Before the Storm, you'll know that Steph is an avid D&D player, or as it's known in-game, Kingdoms and Caverns, and as such, there's some fun references to Critical Role, a popular D&D web series. There are also some neat callbacks to previous games as well, such as Chloe's shirt and Glowy Bear, but that's not where the callbacks end. In the latter half of the DLC, there's memories that Steph thinks back on that involve both Chloe and Rachel. Of course, even in a DLC, Life is Strange can't help but come out swinging in the feels department. The gaming session between Steph and Mikey was hands down the best part of the DLC. You could feel the depth of Steph and Mikey's grief as they reminisced on what went down years ago. Something only the two of them could really understand, and I loved how much Mikey was there for Steph. As someone who played through Before the Storm, I was so happy to see that those two are still such good friends after all these years. And this felt like an epilogue to that game in some ways because of this scene between Mikey and Steph. So, with all that being said, I really had an awesome time with this game. While it didn't quite surpass the magic of the first game in the series, it definitely made some good changes from the second game and had an engaging story, mystery, and characters that kept me invested until the end. I'd say I liked it more than Life is Strange 2 overall, even if it didn't beat out the first Life is Strange for me, and I still would definitely recommend it. What's nice too is if you're new to the series, you absolutely don't have to have played the other games in the series to enjoy True Colors. It can definitely stand on its own, and can be enjoyed on its own merits. And if you played the first game plus Before the Storm, then I would absolutely 100% recommend playing the Wavelengths DLC. And I might also recommend Tissues for that one in particular as well. You can, of course, play it without having played the other games too, but I don't think it would have the same emotional impact without having played the others. But yeah, there you have it. That's my final thoughts on True Colors and Wavelengths. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you guys listening to my final thoughts. And now that I'm done with this, it's time to start a new Sunday game. So, with that being said, I'm going to be playing the latest horror game from Yang Yang. That's right, I'll be playing Saint Maker. I know a few of you guys have asked me if I was going to play that, so that's next on the docket. From what I understand, it's a lot shorter than the letter was, so hopefully it won't take me 2 years or so to complete it. But anyways, I hope I'll see you guys over there for that, and if not, maybe I'll catch you for the next game after that one. Either way though, thanks again as always for watching. Until next time, I will see you later.